As I perused the shelves of the library, my eyes fell upon an ancient tome tucked away in a forgotten corner of the history section. The book's worn leather cover and faded pages gave it an air of mystery, and a sense of curiosity compelled me to reach for it. As I pulled the book from its resting place, a cloud of dust rose into the air, and a shiver ran down my spine. Settling into a secluded corner, I opened the book to reveal its contents. The writing was in an archaic language, and the text seemed to dance before my eyes, making it challenging to decipher. I couldn't help but feel a strange aura emanating from the pages, as though the book had a story of its own to tell. As I continued to read, I discovered descriptions of bizarre and terrifying encounters. The tales spoke of haunted places, where spirits roamed freely, and unexplainable phenomena plagued unsuspecting individuals. Each account was written with such detail and intensity that it felt like I was experiencing the events firsthand. One passage stood out from the rest, recounting a harrowing night in an old mansion. The author described hearing unexplained footsteps echoing through empty halls, eerie apparitions drifting through the darkness, and chilling whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end as I read, and a sense of unease settled in my gut. The more I read, the more I felt drawn into the stories, as if they were weaving a spell around me. It was as though the book itself was alive, reaching out to ensnare my mind and soul. I tried to shake off the feeling, but it persisted, growing stronger with each turn of the page. As I reached the end of the book, I realized that it held no clear conclusion or resolution to the mysteries it presented. Instead, it left me with a profound sense of dread and a lingering feeling that the stories it contained were not mere fiction. Fearful of the power this book seemed to wield over my emotions, I carefully closed its cover and returned it to its rightful place on the shelf. I felt a mix of relief and trepidation as I walked away, vowing never to touch that eerie tome again. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the images and stories that had ingrained themselves in my mind. My dreams were plagued by shadowy figures and ghostly apparitions, and I found myself looking over my shoulder at every turn. As the weeks passed, I grew increasingly anxious, haunted by the tales from that sinister book. I couldn't help but wonder if the stories were real accounts of long-forgotten horrors, or if the book itself was cursed, an object that held a dark and malevolent power. Ultimately, I made the decision to return to the library and ask the staff about the history of that mysterious book. However, as I approached the section where it had been placed, I found the shelf empty. The book had vanished without a trace, leaving me with more questions than answers. On a stormy night, the wind howled outside, rattling the windows of the old library. The rain poured in torrents, creating a haunting symphony of nature's fury. As the power went out, the library was engulfed in darkness, and the once familiar surroundings took on an eerie and unfamiliar appearance. Alone in the dimly lit library, I felt a sense of both excitement and unease. The flickering candlelight added to the mystique of the place, casting dancing shadows on the walls. I tried to convince myself that I was safe, that it was just a power outage, but the unsettling feeling persisted. The storm seemed to have unleashed something unseen, something lurking in the shadows. As I walked cautiously through the aisles, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of raindrops tapping on the roof and the occasional crackle of the candles. The darkness seemed to have a life of its own, and I could almost hear whispers echoing through the books. My heart pounded as I turned a corner and caught sight of faint movements in the distance. My breath hitched in my throat as I strained my eyes to see clearer. It was as if shadows were flitting between the bookshelves, playing tricks on my mind. I took hesitant steps forward, driven by both curiosity and dread. Each footfall seemed to reverberate through the library, amplifying the sense of isolation. The figures were now more distinct, yet still elusive, vanishing into thin air whenever I tried to focus on them. Then, a cold gust of wind swept through the library, causing the candles to flicker wildly. I felt a sudden chill, and my skin broke out in goosebumps. I turned around to find no source for the draft, but the sensation of being watched intensified. In the darkness, I could hear faint whispers, indistinct yet haunting. My mind played tricks on me, conjuring up ghostly apparitions and strange figures lurking in the shadows. Fear gripped me, but I couldn't tear myself away from the enigmatic scene unfolding before me. As I ventured further into the darkness, the library seemed to expand, its corridors stretching into infinity. The flickering candle flames created a macabre dance of light and shadow, distorting reality. My heart raced, and I realized that I had lost all sense of direction. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, causing me to freeze in my tracks. Their face was obscured, their features hidden in the shadows. They seemed to glide silently toward me, their movements eerily graceful. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of danger. Instinctively, I turned and ran, the pounding of my footsteps echoing through the library. The figure pursued me, their presence closing in on me like a suffocating shroud. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I reached the entrance of the library, bursting through the doors and into the stormy night. The rain soaked me to the bone, but I didn't care. I needed to escape that haunting place, to leave behind the shadows that had come to life. As I ran through the rain-soaked streets, I couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent had awakened within the library that night. As I stepped into the library, the familiar scent of old books filled the air, wrapping me in a comforting embrace. It was a place I often sought solace in, a haven where the troubles of the world seemed to fade away amidst the endless shelves of knowledge. Little did I know that this visit would be anything but comforting. The library was nearly empty, with only a few scattered souls quietly absorbed in their reading. I felt at ease, my footsteps echoing softly in the hushed atmosphere. As I wandered through the dimly lit aisles, I noticed a figure in the shadows, their presence barely noticeable, but enough to send a shiver down my spine. At first, I tried to dismiss the feeling, attributing it to my overactive imagination. After all, libraries were known for their quiet and mysterious ambience. But as I moved from aisle to aisle, I couldn't shake the unsettling sensation of being watched. Glancing over my shoulder, I caught glimpses of the figure, their face obscured by the darkness. My heart quickened, and a sense of dread settled in the pit of my stomach. It was as though an invisible thread connected us, drawing me deeper into the labyrinth of books. I tried to focus on my search, pretending not to notice the figure, but its presence loomed ever larger, making it impossible to concentrate. My hands trembled as I reached for a book, and I knew I had to leave. As I made my way toward the exit, the feeling of being followed intensified. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the silence, sending chills down my spine. "You shouldn't be here," it whispered, its tone sending shivers down my spine. I turned around, my heart pounding in my chest, but the figure had vanished into the shadows once more. Fear gripped me, and I quickened my pace, desperate to escape the library and the mysterious presence that haunted me. As I reached the exit, relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The figure emerged from the darkness, their features still obscured, and a cold dread settled in my bones. Without warning, the figure stepped closer, their movements calculated and menacing. "You can't leave," they hissed, their voice dripping with malevolence. Panic surged through me, and I turned and ran, my footsteps echoing loudly in the empty library. I reached the librarian's desk, gasping for breath as I tried to explain what had happened. The librarian listened attentively, concern etched on her face. Together we alerted the security personnel, and they quickly swept the library in search of the mysterious figure. But when they returned, they found no trace of the person I had described. It was as though they had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a haunting memory of that unsettling encounter.